All right. So yeah, like I was saying, so so my friend from that summer that I was hanging out with, smoking weed with, he eventually just quits talking to me cold turkey. And so then the issues at school continue to progress. It gets to the point that one science teacher from sophomore year, she's one time when I'm going to and what's weird is like sometimes she'd act fine and then other times she'd act standoffish as if like you would have thought I'd done something or something real weird. When I was going to homeroom, which my homeroom was that math class that I was telling you guys about that was right by the cafeteria. I remember I came in from the other way. So like there's the main entrance like down the side of that half-shaped eye over on this side. Then there's the cafeteria entrance I was telling you about at the beginning of the story. So this day I came in through the entrance. As I'm coming down that long hall, that last room where the math class is right by the cafeteria as I'm going in there, I still remember it like it was yesterday. My math teacher was right here on this side, on closest to the long hallway. That one teacher I'm telling you guys about, the science teacher from my sophomore year, was right there on the other side of the doorway beside my math teacher. Across the hall was this one male teacher I had. I can't remember which class he taught, and I'm trying really hard not to say actual names. And then beside him on the other side of that hallway was my she was like animal science or farm science, I don't know, something to do with animals and farming and learning about FDA stuff and all that. And for that junior for the junior year, a redhead woman. And so she the redhead woman, the animal science teacher, ends up to nodding to me as I'm walking past them, and to the blonde, and then she ends up saying to and that teacher was blonde, the teacher I'm telling you guys about, the science teacher I had sophomore year. She ends up saying, "Are you and him cool now?" And she ended up saying, "Yeah, as long as he doesn't stalk me and come by my house or anything." And I'm thinking like, what the hell? Because I'm already getting made fun of all the time because the odor thing. To get to a point, even teachers and staff are talking about the odor thing. Like that one male teacher I told you guys about, like not even a week before that, that soft that science teacher from sophomore year ends up coming into I think it was my history or English class, talking to that teacher. She takes her outside, she's, like, in a bad mood or whatever, then that male teacher pops his head in that classroom, ends up saying the smell is like a chemical, like, smell, and everyone else was saying it smells like shit. Some people were saying I smelled like, the smell was like a weed smell, and he ends up saying it's like a chemical-like smell. So then it's getting to a point, like, I don't know what the hell people are talking about anymore. Once in a while, people have said, like, it smell there's, like, a urine smell. There's some girls in there that are, like, moms and everything, so who knows? But so, yeah, anyway, so she ends up making that comment as I'm going into homeroom, and so now I'm like, "Great." She's acting like I did something to her, and now she's making it seem like I'm just this weirdo, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty introverted in things to begin with, but I'm not a weirdo like that, you know what I mean? I'm weird in terms of I stick to myself and the condition itself. I guess if I didn't have this, I would think it's such and such might be a weird person or they don't take care of themselves or whatever either. But in terms of like weirdo shit like that, no, I'm not one of those guys. And so then this is already adding on top of the stress level because the stress level is already here. Now it got brought up all the way to here. So I'm like really freaking out. And then the older, it's progressively getting worse because the stress is getting worse. And one day I go to see the counselor, school counselor, and I just start breaking down. I just start tearing up. And it finally gets to a point. I have all these stories of all these things that's been building up. And I just finally tell her, I said, "Look, ma'am, I'm not going to say her actual name, but I'm not, it's really hard not to say people's actual names. But and I tell her, I say, if I didn't have my belief in God and being in the South, people always say, if you take your own life, you're going to hell. You can't go to heaven. So I was crying. I remember the tears streaming down my face, and I told her, I said, after I started telling her some of the stories, I say, everyone keeps saying I smell like shit and everything, and she says, "Well, I don't smell you, Chris. Like you look like a really clean young man. This, that, the third." And I start crying. And I tell her, I said, "Look," I said, because of how much everyone keeps making fun of me, and I didn't even get into the teacher part of it. That was just me somewhat going into the students and losing friends and getting made fun of. And there was times where it wouldn't even just be about the odor. Like the odor for some people, that's when I start to learn the lesson. That's a doorway for them to attack your character and things further. So there's some girls where they'd make fun of me and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, don't feel bad for them." So there's one girl, I'll keep it real. I was just trying to bust cheeks, and she was sick, and I had that going on. One day, going in the homeroom, uh, one of the girls was like, "Don't feel bad for making fun of him and everything," and that was one of the few times I honestly felt like I kinda deserved it because that one girl had the flu and she really liked me, but because of the stress and things, I was dealing with, like, a pornography addiction on top of it, so then I thought, like, sex and certain things would be a means to escape, but it later down the road, I'd find out it's not, but anyway, so there were some times where it was warranted, sometimes it wasn't. Like, some people was starting to say that I looked like a school shooter and all this shit, and it really sucks because it doesn't help that I'm a white dude with glasses, that really doesn't help my case, but, I can promise guys, no matter how upset I get, I'm not gonna do anything like that. But, so there's that stuff on top of it, and again, the odor was like a doorway for people to take jabs further and further and further. And so I'm crying to her and I say, "Look, I feel like if I wouldn't go to hell for taking my own life, that I would do it." And so she ends up getting upset. She tears up a little bit. She's like, Chris, she's like, stuff like this. It's protocol that we have to contact your parents and you have to go to the hospital for that suicide watch stuff. So they bring in my mom. That counselor has me talk with another counselor. I start giving testimonies and names to certain students that are taking the bullying and things a little too far with the older stuff. And some of those people, those counselors and stuff, had really personal relationships with them because I go to an alternative school, so most of us we got a story, and so they felt pretty bad because they knew some of those girls. And for me, I can't speak for everyone. Like in the beginning, I mostly got it the worst from women. Some dudes, yeah, they would be like, "Oh, that dude needs to take a shower," or the gay stuff. A lot of those assumptions didn't start to get made until the following school year. But this school year, it was getting, it was just like kind of like the boiling point, like things were just getting started. And so yeah, I tell her take her own life. My mom comes in, start giving these testimonies. I'd been telling her at home that people were making comments and stuff, but up until that point, all this was so new. I don't feel like anyone fully believed me, and I even got in trouble because back when I lived in Wyoming and stuff, I'm man enough to admit it now that I'm older. I was like a habitual liar and stuff, and I came clean about these things when we moved back to Kentucky. And so that's why I felt like people were like really hesitant to not fully believe me because it was like a boy that cried wolf. And like back then, rightfully so. I'll have to say that because I did lie quite a bit in my younger years. But so this is going on when my mom hears that I want to take my own life because of all this stuff. She starts tearing up and getting emotional. She doesn't want me to feel that way. And everything that was going on in school was really starting to take a toll. So, end up doing the suicide watch stuff. I could go into more detail about that stuff, but I'm not going to. But end up doing that. When the doctor comes in to see me, they end up asking uh, what I'm there for, like how I wanted to take my life. The typical answers that they have to ask at a place like that. And I was like, well, I didn't have like a plan set in place. It was just one of those things like because of how bad I'm getting bullied, like there's, obviously the thoughts crossing my mind now. And so I end up having to talk to him about that, tell him about the odor, people making fun of me at school. Of course, the doctor at that time was like, well, I don't smell you. You seem like a nice young man. And so I get offered either I can go home or I can go to this one place somewhere else in town. I would have ended up having to be there for a few nights, do counseling, suicide watch, and potentially medication, things of that nature. So end up finishing up with that. It starts to create some tension on the home life because obviously, mom being a single mom, uh, can't really be getting calls and having to come deal with stuff. Like one of the things was because of how many jobs she worked. One of the deals we'd made is in my younger years, I used to get in a lot of trouble for like fighting and things like that, and she didn't want to have to get called up, um, so she could stay at her job, and rightfully so. And so that began to create issues. So then eventually end up going back to school, and then I start telling the counselor about the teacher stuff, and more specifically, the teacher from sophomore school year and the stuff she had been saying and the accusations and things of that nature. So one of the original plans they had to stop the bullying was they wanted me to pick two of my class periods to do the work in the office just to kind of have that break. So that means I'd end up going to one or two classes, go into the office, work on that class or work on ingenuity to make up credits, and then go back for the following class. So that's what I ended up doing. And and even in the office, it was strange because that one teacher from sophomore year, like I'd said, there was times where she acted normal and fine, and she'd even ask me how my day is going, this, that, the third. Then there's other times like she would ignore me as if I had truly done something to her, and I didn't understand it. You know what I'm trying to say? It was like that tension, like if you do something to someone and then they go out of their way to ignore you because they don't trust you, they don't f with you, stuff like that. And so it just starts getting very odd, very weird, and yeah, I just couldn't deal with it. The tension was starting to get too much, and other teachers were starting talking about the smell. Some were saying it's chemical, others was saying stuff. It was just bad, but it's nothing like the following year. And that story time, that one, I'll make sure I go into a bit more thoroughly because, man, yeah, it gets worse from there. And so eventually, I tell my mom everything that's going on. And so then I eventually get brave enough to tell the counselor about not just the testimony about the other students, but what was going on with the teachers. Because anytime the few friends I had when it came to fellow students, colleague, I guess student colleagues, I don't know how you'd word that, uh, classmates, the few that I trusted and I asked them about it, they'd either say A, that they don't smell it, or B, they'd end up saying, well, sometimes you smell like weed or whatever, but they'd never outright say the shit stuff. Anytime they'd say that stuff, it just got blurted out in the open, and then they'd accuse whoever they wanted to accuse of it. But I noticed that this odor stuff was starting to follow me anywhere. So I start uh I started telling my counselor about the teacher stuff and how she made it seem like that. I recounted that story of going into homeroom that day and my I will just call her my animal teacher. My animal teacher nodded at me and said, "Are you him cool now?" And then the science teacher I had from sophomore year ended up saying, "Yeah, as long as he doesn't come by my house or anything like that." And so we end up having this big conference where it was me, my mom, um, I guess like my mom's best friend, which technically she's kind of like my godmom. She's like my other mom if anything would have ever happened to my mom. Um, and the principal, the counselor, uh, and then they individually start bringing in the teachers, like the science teacher that I had. They brought her in for questioning, and the redheaded animal teacher that I told you guys about. They brought her in for questioning as well. And so bring them in for questioning. Oh yeah, and there's two people from the actual Davis County Board of Ed, the school board. So we all come in, they individually get questioned, and when uh they start they start with the animal teacher lady, and they ask her about the event, more specifically the event of the hallway story that I keep telling you guys about. She says no, she denies it, but everyone could kind of tell that she was nervous and jittery, whatever. So she ends up leaving. She denies it. I say the story. When she denies it, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Because she's not the person that really directly said the harmful things or what would have been a very dark accusation and stuff like that. It's bad enough when it does really happen in real life. But then when someone's saying something that didn't happen at all, and I'm already getting attacked for smelling bad and stuff, and then to have unnecessary attacks on my character and stuff on top of it, that was really the last thing I needed, especially for up here for my mental well-being. And so then they bring in the one teacher that ends up saying that nods and says, "Yeah, as long as he doesn't come to my house or anything." So they end up coming in. They sit her down. The principal has me tell the story, and each time that they bring in someone for questioning, I have to tell the story, and each time the story's not changing. I could tell this story. You guys, literally, whoever watches this video, you guys could literally ask me about this story any random day of the week, any random time, periodically throughout the course of the month, throughout even years later. Like, I'll put it to you like this, if I were to write a book about all this stuff, you guys clearly read the book and question me about stuff. I do not have to read that damn book to remember these stories. And if I was really a liar, I wouldn't be able to remember it this well. And so when she sits down, they question me about they have me reiterate the story again about walking down the hallway, one teacher nodding at me, says, "Are you and him cool now?" And then she ends up saying, "Yeah, as long as he doesn't come to my house or anything." So I end up saying that story, and she ends up being like, "No, none of that happened," trying to act like me and her were cool, but she kept like making a big deal about things and then making it seem like I was a weirdo. And I think it really stemmed back to that day when the school year had started and I kept looking back, waiting for my friend, and then she kept looking at me. And then eventually I quit talking to that girl, and then I just go into the cafeteria to go, and then eventually my friend was in there. It's just, I guess, from talking to that girl, I didn't catch when he walked by. And but then again, that's just like a basic. I don't really know. I felt like it was like something small that got turned into a way bigger deal than what actually happened. I remember I get so upset. I end up blowing, not really fully blowing up, but kind of blowing up to where I end up saying, "Look," I was like, I have never done anything like that. I said, I'm not trying to sound like a jackass, but when people end up leaving my proximity, it doesn't matter if it's teachers, others, school workers, even now that I'm an adult, coworkers, whatever. When I leave the job, school, whatever, I don't really give a damn what anybody does on their personal time or on their free time. I don't care. I'm not gonna look up every little thing about somebody. I don't care to know where somebody lives. I don't care to know, like, you know what I mean? Like certain parameters is none of my business. I don't have to have your phone number. I don't have to, you know what I mean? Certain things I really don't care. And it's not like me trying to sound like a jackass. It's just I don't care. I honestly just don't care. And so I ended up tossing my phone up on the table. I was like, look, I was like, you guys can send someone from the local police department to come look on my phone right now. I was like, "You are not gonna find her name and me trying to, like, find her address or anything weird like that." I was scared, though, because I'm gonna be honest, guys, they would've found, like, a bunch of pornography and stuff, but that would've been embarrassing, but stuff like that, though, there were not no one was gonna find anything like that because in all honesty, not trying to sound like a broken record, but I really didn't care, and so this was turned into a big deal. So, again, quick summary, start getting made fun of, and then I'm dealing with this accusation stuff and making it seem like I'm a weirdo on top of it. So this is like a perfect recipe for a disaster cake, right? So after that meeting, we get left with a choice. Either I can stick it out and do the original plan like we were doing, where I'd have certain uh periods throughout the school schedule where I could go to an isolated place and do, excuse me, sorry, indigestion, where I could do schoolwork, or I could end up doing night school. At the point in time, I was like, you know what, night school may not be that bad. They want me to do Ingenuity, and again, Ingenuity, for those that's not familiar with it, it's an online program to where if you miss any credits or if you need any credits you need to make up, that's what it's used for. So junior and senior year, in the area that I live, they will have you do Ingenuity to make up any missing credits. So, uh, so yeah, I start going to night school. That first night was decently well. I was talking to this one girl. Some people there, you could tell they clearly had some issues, a little bit more than what I was dealing with. Like what I was dealing with was mostly just wanting to be in isolation because of the medical stuff. But some of those people are like just truly bad and needed help. And and out of nowhere, one night, everything was pretty normal that first night. The second night is when everyone starts bringing up the odor issue at night school. Um, and out of nowhere, it got to a point. I remember my substitute teacher. She brought in this Subway sandwich. The woman's going, "Yeah, dude, this school is messy, man. I mean, like this night school teacher. There's two night school teachers. One woman would end up working in this one class. She was kind of like a teacher's helper, kind of a thing. She also works during the days, and I would run into her later down the road, senior year, when I get to that story. And but she helped out with this night school teacher. This night school teacher was a bartender going through a divorce, telling this one country dude in there all her damn problems. It was messy as hell. And and I'm over here just trying to like mind my business. Everyone's talking about the odor. She brings in this Subway sandwich, right? She says she can't eat it because the smell. And then the cowboy dude is like making this big deal, and I guess because the way I'm dressed or whatever, he's going in about some people don't want to do hard work, some people don't want to get their hands dirty, some people, and like I just like you know what I mean, like that direct but indirect trying to come at you stuff. And again, I may be looking into it for more than it's worth, or he may have really been saying it like that because it's just kind of weird that anyway, just gonna tell the story. Fuck that. Anyway, so he starts saying that, and then out of nowhere, uh, he ends up really liking this one girl that talked to me the night prior. She gave me her Snapchat and everything, and it's not like I was like a fuck boy or anything like that. It was just I was decently friendly. She gave it to me, you know, it was cool, whatever. The next night, I guess I have like an odor flare up or whatever because even that girl, everyone was just kind of ignoring me, keeping their space from me, asking like, "What's that smell?" And it's like happening all over again. And then the country dude, he just starts getting like real angry out of nowhere, and he ends up asking the dude that was sitting not far beside me. He's like, "I killed someone one time," and everyone's like, "Oh, like bullshit, dude, whatever." He's like, "No, really, ask that guy." He's like, "The dude dating my sister, he ended up beating on her, and he says he ended up killing him. They beat him to death and buried him somewhere in North Carolina where." No one's gonna care because his family supposedly they're pieces of trash and no one's gonna care to ever look for this guy. And he said, "No, you guys think I'm lying? Ask him. I had a picture of it on Snapchat." And the kid was like, "No, yeah, it's real. Like he really killed somebody." And everyone, and I'm just like, damn. Like, man, I thought I had issues. Like I'm here just because I'm getting made fun of because whatever this is, I can't, like I don't know what the hell it is. And everyone's saying that they smell something that I'm not smelling. And yeah, that first year I did not smell what people were smelling. So that's what made it even more anxiety ridden because I have no idea what people are talking about. So, uh, so eventually I end up messaging my sister. And I'm like, Hannah, I was like, please get me out of here. And at the time, she ended up living somewhere in Indiana. She drives all the way to one where we live in a town in Kentucky, picks me up. and drops me back off. And when I go to leave, the night teacher, this is what makes it even better, man. Is so you know how I end up saying I was only at night school for like 2 nights. That first night, everything was fine. That second night, I guess since the odor flare up or whatever, that night school teacher tried to make it seem like when she was doing attendance that I wasn't there the night previous. And I said, "No, ma'am." I was like, "This isn't my first night." She's like, "No, this is your first night. I would have remembered you yesterday." And what I take from this, and again, this is a hindsight thing, I didn't think about it at the time, was since the odor's flaring up that night and everything's real prominent, noticeable, everyone's talking about it, that I guess she's trying to say, like, I guess I blended in that first night, but then because of that odor, she's like one of those things like, "Oh, no, I would have remembered you," and because smelling bad to that degree. So, my sister picks me up. When I go to leave, the night school teacher's like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "My sister's here to pick me up. I'm leaving." Because with him, this dude talking about killing somebody, everyone getting rowdy and stuff, like, I can't even focus on the ingenuity. I can't do the algebra that I need to do. I suck at math to begin with. I like language arts, I like English, and I love history, like all that stuff. Cool. I don't even really have to study for some of that stuff. I could just do it if I had to. But yeah, for algebra, for math related stuff, if it's not addition, multiplication, I really have to study, and sometimes I need help. And I just couldn't, man. There's too much going on. A lot of those people, drug usage, and I'm talking about some way deeper than marijuana. Uh, it's hardcore anger issues, issues with the law. Like this wasn't really my crowd. Like I grew up around gang culture and stuff growing up out west. Excuse me. But the longer I kept being away from that, the less I resonated with it. And it's not like I'm definitely a people person. Like I like people, and I don't believe just because you do something wrong that makes you a bad person. But I'm talking about the people that go out of their way to intentionally create issues and intentionally create problems. I try to the longer I kept being away from that toxic society, the more I try to distance myself from that because it's unnecessary. And when you start to know people that lose their lives because of the streets, you just as you get older, if you mature, you look at it differently. So so yeah, this dude's talking about killing some dude in Carolinas, and this is just it's getting really out of hand really fast. Sister picks me up, and that teacher's yeah, she sorry guys, trying to backtrack a little bit. So that teacher ends up saying, "So where you going?" I was like, "My sister's here to pick me up." She's like, "Well, you can't just up and leave. Like we have to escort you to make sure that the door's locked." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." I grab my stuff, end up walking. She doesn't say anything to me the whole time. I end up going to leave. She's like, "Oh, you gotta sign out on this piece of paper. You can't just leave." And I'm like, "Damn, lady, like you could have just said this." I mean, you and but it's like she was saying it like with an attitude. It's like picture walking a dog and like yanking the leash really hard. I mean, it felt like that, but like just in a verbal way. So she keeps doing this shit, and I'm like pumping out all the brakes. I'm like, "Damn, lady, like just tell me this stuff in advance. I'll go ahead and do whatever you need me to do, so I can just go." I mean, you guys, I have some issues, but you guys have issues. And so I end up getting to leave. My sister, I get in my sister's car. We go to leave. And as soon as we're getting ready to pull off, my sister's all like, "Yeah, I don't like that lady." And I start telling her everything that was going on. She's like, "Yeah, yeah, now I really don't like that lady." And I was like, "Yeah, tell me about it." And sister's really cool. And so she ends up taking me home. And I start telling my mom about everything that's going on in night school. Um, obviously, like I need to be in school, so she's getting kind of frustrated with the fact of me not really being in school, but at the same time, I couldn't focus at the night school, couldn't focus at day school. So we end up having yet another meeting with the principal. And this time he ends up telling me and my mom that we need to go have a meeting with the actual school board because he's like, at this point, this is like the only two options, but your story is, I guess, kind of unique. So take it up with the school board and let's see what they have to say. Keep in mind, two of those school board members were there from the original meeting of questioning the teachers and stuff. So me and my mom go to the local school board. or fuck, I'm gonna say it, Davis County School Board, and we talk with that woman that was there, the other dude, and some more people that's on the board. I tell them the stuff that happened with the both fellow students, teachers, people saying I need to take a shower. Everyone always asking why does he smell like butt? Um, Everyone blurting out smells like shit. And then on the school bus, that one girl saying someone shit their pants, I could smell it. The one girl yelling, one of y'all needs to put on deodorant, I'm tired of smelling this shit every single day. All this stuff, like I'm recounting all these stories. And then on top of it, the teacher, when the animal teacher ended up nodding at me saying, "Are you and him cool now?" And then the science teacher I had sophomore year ends up saying, "Yeah, as long as he doesn't show up to my house or anything." So I recount all these stories to them, and the one teacher that was there for the sit-in, she was like, "You don't smell like anything. You smell okay and everything." And it got to a point like I was kind of getting tired of people saying that because even if they didn't smell me, that didn't stop everyone else from saying things. And even some of the people that said that they didn't smell me when we'd have these meetings and stuff, when my mom and other people wasn't around, I'm just trying to be a student and go put my head down and focus on schoolwork and go to school like a kid's supposed to do. These grown ass adults are making fun of me and talking about how bad I smell and everything. And then the weirdo accusations on top of it that I'm supposedly going to show up at that one teacher's house or whatever. And I didn't even know where the fuck she lived. So that's a pardon my language, that's a bullshit story to begin with. So all this is taking place. I'm recounting all these stories to the school board. So they end up telling me they leave the room for a little bit, then they come back and they end up saying, "Well, for your son," they're talking to my mom now. They're like, "Well, for your son, he can end up doing ingenuity from home, but he's got to do his schoolwork from home." And at first, like, I felt like a sense of relief just because I felt like at home I could just kind of finally be left alone. But as you guys will find out from next time I do another story time, that's not fully the case. But I end up starting to do schoolwork from home. Again, I have issues with math. Now that school year, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it, guys. I'm going to try to. I'm trying to go in depth with some of these stories, but at the same time, I'm also trying to leave air pockets in case there's ever a day where I can go in these things a little deeper. Or anyway, I have some stuff in the works, but I'm trying not to ruin it. So, uh, so I end up going home. The remainder of that school year, I'm just kind of like a degenerate. I go from working out all the time to now I'm overeating. All that free time, mom's at work most of the time, and I'm like over consuming pornography and stuff. And so then, like when I have lows on top of going through what I'm going through, then I have really drastic lows because anyone that knows anything about science when it comes to frequent sex or masturbation, too much dopamine releases can create hardcore depression because that you're creating a chemical imbalance from overusage. So So then that starts happening. So then I go from working out all the time, caring about my physique, caring about my health, my body, what I put into my body, to then I'm not caring. I'm eating like bags of chips all the damn time. Uh, just eat my little heart out. Uh, that addiction. Um, I I kind of quit smoking weed and stuff. Now I quit hanging out with that crowd because then I had no one to really hang out with. And then and then from there onward, then then I start basically just sitting home lounging. The only way this is how bad it got. The only way I had any real social interaction was I had to watch reality TV shows. And I'm not a fan of reality TV shows, but my favorite one, if I ever got to give a shout out to anybody, is and I don't know if they'd acknowledge it because this malware stuff's kind of weird to begin with. So if any of these stories ever gain traction, it'd be kind of weird. But uh, well, good for us. But to the outside world, you know, let's just keep it real. They're gonna deem this to be weird. But was Action Bronson's "Fuck That's Delicious" because I loved cooking and stuff. That was one of my favorite pastimes. Anytime I spent time with my dad, the few things that we had in common was video games, cooking, and boxing. That's what really made me and my dad like that. Uh, so yeah, I enjoyed watching that, watching them go try different restaurants, different cuisines. I thought it was cool. And so yeah, guys, the rest of that school year, I'm just kind of like being a bum. Not gonna sit here and sugarcoat it, laying around. Time I try to do schoolwork, I wouldn't get very far. Didn't have the motivation to do it. Everything that happened that school year just kind of depleted me. But then around springtime, uh, I run into this video where I start learning about like Malcolm X and stuff like that quite a bit more, growing curiosity. Watch some videos about Pastor Farrakhan, and so then that starts planting the seeds because in freshman year I learned about Malcolm X, and then living in the South, I talk. There's some stuff in the works. Hopefully, I can talk about it a little bit more in depth. But it's basically culture shock. I saw prejudice on both sides of the fence, like whites would do to the black folks here in this town in Kentucky that I live in, and the other way around. And it was just sad. And then people fetishizing over each other for because of certain physical qualities racially and things like that. It was just I don't know if it's because I was becoming at that age where I'm more socially aware or if this place is just a complete culture shock all around. But like, you know what I mean? Like fetishes and stuff, that's everywhere. But I was just becoming super aware of these things. And growing kind of disgusted by it at the same time. Because again, I think people's people, anybody can fall in love with anybody, but it was like hyper fixation on certain skin color qualities, eye color qualities, sexual anatomy qualities. I hate that's putting it nicely, stuff like that. And I just grew disgusted by it. I think it's gross. I think people's people, anybody could fall in love with anybody, but if you're hyper fixating on eye color, skin color, um, certain sexual qualities, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. And I don't care what anyone says. In my book, that's not love. So I start watching these videos from Farrakhan, Pastor Farrakhan. I think he's a pastor or Brother Farrakhan because they're Islam. So, or my bad, they're Muslim. And then that leads me to start watching videos about the bullet in the ballot speech like given by Brother Malcolm. And I just grew insanely captivated by this guy because one of my favorite rappers was Nas. And in his Illmatic documentary, him and his brother Jungle was talking about being homeschooled and the books their dad had them read. Books like from Superman to Man by J.A. Rogers, The Egyptian Book of the Dead, and the book that really stood out was the autobiography of Malcolm X, as told to by Alex Haley. For those that don't know, Alex Haley, he wrote Roots. And Malcolm X, he was just this polarizing figure because in our history textbooks growing up, there's all this stuff about MLK. There's all this stuff about Rosa Parks. There's all this stuff about I think his name was not Jesse Owens, but the other racer that ended up. Sorry, guys, don't kill me. But if you guys know the name of the guy, leave it in the comments because my mind's blanking. I normally know his name. But the guy that held his fist up during the '68 New Mexico Olympics, he was a sprinter uh, for the track team. I can't remember his name, but him and another individual, they, the silent protest on the podium, which, that's a big moment in American sports history. And so, yeah, all this stuff. But then when it came to Malcolm X, he just got a label slapped on him as black nationalist uh, and Muslim. And it's almost like good cop, bad cop scenario between him and MLK. And I'm not one of those people. I don't go based off other people's opinions. I like to figure things out on my own. So I grow curious. Now I have that book in mind, and keep that in mind because in stories later down the road, some years later, I will eventually end up reading that book, and I'll tell you guys about that later. But so I so yeah, end up seeing this stuff. But then one thing I run into was I start seeing this guy named David Goggins. So I start seeing this everywhere, and I'm like, okay, David Goggins, this is interesting. And what captured me was one of my favorite movies growing up was Rocky, and more specifically, the first two movies are my favorite. The third one's my favorite just because the intro, seeing someone go from nothing into becoming a somebody, being with the Muppets, all these endorsements, like it's cool as hell. And one of my big dreams that's been hindered because of this condition, all the surgeries, was I wanted to be a world champion in the sport of boxing. Like that's was my big goal. It wasn't to be a podcaster. It wasn't even when I started going to college to be an archaeologist or for journalism. Those weren't my initial dreams. Like my big dream is either to become a music producer and get signed to like Dreamville or something like that. I want to be like the next Just Blaze or Kanye West, or or to become a world champion in boxing. So as I keep getting older, I start growing a little bit more interested in the sport. Spending time with my dad, I'd watch boxing with him in the summer, and but little by little, around my freshman year of high school, to backtrack a little bit, the Creed movie comes out. I wanted to box. Mom ended up saying no because of money and certain things, and because my grades would always slip when I did sports. So there's always that interest with that sport, and so he's talking about when Rocky gets dropped in the first movie around round 14, when the song comes on, "Going the Distance," and you're seeing him get the crap beat out of him. He lands some good shots on Apollo, but overall, like, Apollo's pretty much dominating the fight. And there's that part in round 14 where he gets dropped, and it's this big whopping uppercut. Most guys, even though it's a movie, if someone landed a shot that flush on you, most of the time you're staying down. You're not gonna pop back up. And what was incredible was that part when he's getting back up and you hear Mick yelling at him, stay down. And he's getting up and he's taking that deep breath and you hear him let out like that little winds of pain. But his, at that point, for anyone that's never boxed before, in the professional ranks, I have no experience. I've never had to fight 8 rounds or anything that long. But after the first, even if you're very well conditioned, after 5 to 6 minutes of fighting, your body starts to shut down, which means at that point, everything that you train for, the reason why coaches are so hard on certain things is because you have to have that muscle memory. Because eventually, there's certain guys that you are going to fight that time, you no longer think about time. You get lost in the fight. And there comes a point in time your body's gonna be shot, you're gonna have a hard time breathing, and you just gotta will through it. It's how bad you want it. Learning, working on proper breathing techniques when you go on your long distance runs for conditioning is really essential, and running with your mouthpiece in so you don't gag and stuff when you start getting dehydrated and that phlegm and stuff starts kicking in. So he gets up, and David Goggins is talking about uh, because at this point, okay, I had to backtrack a little bit. The reason why I'm pointing that out is because there comes a point in time your body's shot, and at that point, it's heart, will, and that passion, that desire to want to win or to achieve some sort of ending result. And he ends up willing himself up because I remember the speech he gives to his girlfriend before the fight. He says he just doesn't want to be another bum in the neighborhood. No one ever went the distance with Creed. He just wants to go the distance to prove to himself so he can look himself in the mirror and know that he wasn't just another bum from the neighborhood. So he ends up getting up, and Goggins ends up telling Joe Rogan, he says, "I wanted to be that." He said, "I didn't want to be Apollo." He says, "It doesn't mean I necessarily want to be Rocky. I didn't want to be a world champion or anything." He said, "I just wanted to be the guy when Apollo puts his head down because he can't believe he got up, and it's just kind of like that moment of disbelief, like what are you? Like looking at someone that just there's this unwill, this burning tenacity about them, this desire to never die, never quit, however you want to word that. He wanted it so bad. And he says, I want to be that. I want to be the guy in life where people are looking at you like, what are you? And knowing that no matter what you do, like this, per my language, but this is his words, not mine. He says, this motherfucker is going to keep coming after whatever it is that he wants. And, that really hit home for me because I was starting to develop, like, at that age, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know I wanted to be a world champion yet in boxing. I didn't know that I had interest in archaeology. I didn't take school seriously. I was smoking weed, cared about materialistic items like retro Jordans and Amari jeans and stupid shit like that. And wanting to have a Mercedes Benz, and I used to have this dream board of like wanting to sell out MSG as a producer and all this stupid shit. Well, it's stupid to me in hindsight. It's not fully stupid. It's good to dream, but you know what I mean. It was I want to do those things for all the wrong reasons, not for any of the right reasons. Not for the love of the game, but for the materialistic gain. And so So yeah, so that really hits home with me, and then I start, and he's talking about being a Navy SEAL, so I start watching all these military videos. I'm like, oh shit, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. Uh, Start watching videos on Hell Week, except I didn't really know if I wanted to be a Navy SEAL because I can't swim. So then I was like, huh, either Army or Marines. And at the time, I was seeing a therapist, and she used to be in the Army. She's like, if that's a route that you're serious about taking, let me know, and I'll help you. So I start working out and going on runs and stuff again and valuing my body a little bit more. Except I hadn't did calisthenics in such a long time that when I was going to do push-ups, I started trying to do the reps I was doing. Like I was trying to do 150 plus push-ups in one setting. Anyone that knows that you haven't worked out in a long time, if you go from doing a ridiculous amount of reps to taking a long ass break, eating whatever you want and things in between, and then trying to go back to that exact point, you're going to get injured. But my dumbass, I tried doing it anyway. End up messing up my wrist, sprained my wrist. Then it got to a point where for a long time I used to struggle with like grip. I had to like use things to develop grip strength because my wrists, I have like as you can see, I have like pretty scrawny wrists. And so I know spraining my wrist, have issues with that. Took a long time to heal up. And so then I was wanting to do this military stuff, and that's pretty much it for junior year. I ended up getting a summer job at Pizza Hut. No one really talked about the odor or anything. I ended up quitting that job because I something happened. I can't fully remember. I think I just ended up quitting for the sake of quitting. I don't freaking know. But that Pizza Hut wasn't too far from where I lived, and yeah, I quit for some reason. I just can't remember off the top of my head right now, but so yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And then that summer, I got offered the opportunity to either go back to the school I started at, which was Apollo, or go back to Heritage, which was the alternative school. And I chose Heritage. And man, dude, you guys think that school year's bad? Wait till next story time. Dude, the following school year was freaking rough. Anyway, love you guys. Hope you have a good day. Take care. Bye. This is harsh. Yeah, Chris Myatt. Take care.